Good morning, 5th grade. We're going to begin our novel, Hatchet. Before we get started, we're going to answer this focus question to get this warm-up question to get ourselves started. It says, what do you know about divorce? Has it ever affected your life? How? If not, would you ever want it to affect your life, and why? All right, so if I was answering this question, I would write about how my parents got divorced last September, and that affected my life because when I would go home for the holidays, I'd had to schedule time to see my mom, and then I'd have to schedule time to see my dad instead of us all being together. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. It says, describe Brian's internal conflict. How does Brian deal with the conflict? What does this reveal about him as a person? Our vocabulary words are catalog. That's like a list of something, or if you, like in a magazine, or it could also be a verb. If you catalog something, that means like you file it away in your mind to remember for later. The next one is drone, and that's to make a continuous low humming sound. These are sound waves, so it's like going And then cockpit, it's a place where the pilot and the crew sit in an airplane. So this is a picture of the cockpit. All right, we're going to start reading chapter 1. And, looks like you don't have your CSPS, so I'm going to press pause and make that right now. Right now you have your CSPS sheet. Sorry about that. And we're going to continue reading chapter 1, and we're going to use our CSPS strategy. So open up your books and we'll get started. Brian Robeson stared out the window of a small plane at the endless green northern wilderness below. It was a small plane, a Cessna 406, a bush plane, and the engine was so loud, so roaring and consuming and loud that it ruined any chance of conversation. Not that he had much to say. He was 13, and the only passenger on the plane was a pilot named, Jim or Jake or something, who was in his mid-40s and who had been silent as he worked to prepare for takeoff. In fact, since Brian had come to the small airport in New Hampton, New York, to meet the plane, driven by his mother, the pilot had only spoken 5 words to him: get in the co-pilot seat, which Brian had done and had taken off, and that was the last of the conversation. There had been an initial excitement, of course. He had never flown in a single-engine plane before, and to be sitting in the co-pilot seat with all the controls right there in front of him, all the instruments in his face, and the plane cloth for altitude, jerking and sliding on the wind currents as the pilot took off, had been interesting and exciting. But in 5 minutes they had leveled off at 6,000 feet and headed northwest, and from then on the pilot had been silent, staring out the front, and the drone of the engine had been all that was left. The drone and the sea of green trees that lay before the plane's nose and followed to the horizon, spread with lakes, swamps, and wandering streams and rivers. Now Brian sat looking out the window with the roar thundering through his ears and tried to catalog what had led up to his taking this flight. All right, we'll start right there. It says, describe Brian. What is he doing? Well, we know Brian is on a small plane with the pilot, and this is his first time flying, and he's excited about it. So Brian is in a plane, and he's excited because it's his first time flying. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for a quote. You could say he'd never flown in a single-engine plane before. This sentence right here. You can use that for the character. He never flown in a single-engine plane before, and to be sitting in the co-pilot seat had been interesting and exciting. Press pause to write down the quote and play when you're ready for the setting. Well, we know that he is in a Cessna 406, or what's known as like a small bush plane, and his plane took off from Hampton, New York. So we could say Brian left Hampton, New York in a small Cessna 406 plane. And you can use this quote for to be. Alright, and so now we're going to the problem. We're at the part that said the thinking started. The thinking started, always it started with a single word, divorce. It was an ugly word, he thought, a tearing, ugly word that meant fights and yelling. Lawyers, God, he thought, how he hated lawyers, who sat with their comfortable smiles and tried to explain to him in legal terms how all that he lived in was coming apart, and the breaking and shattering of all the solid things, his home, his life, all the solid things. Divorce, a breaking word, an ugly breaking word. Divorce, secrets. No, not secrets so much as just the secret. What he knew and had not told anybody, what he knew about his mother that had caused the divorce, what he knew, the secret. Divorce, the secret. Brian felt his eyes beginning to burn and knew that there would be tears. He had cried for a time, but that was gone now. He didn't cry now. Instead, his eyes burned and tears came, the seeping tears that burned, but he didn't cry. He wiped his eyes with a finger and looked at the pilot out of the corner of his eye to make sure he hadn't noticed the burning and tears. All right, so we'll stop right there. We think about what problem is Brian dealing with. Well, we know that his parents just got divorced, and Brian feels like his home is coming apart. All right, and that not only did his parents get divorced and feels like his home is coming apart, but there's also this secret that he hasn't told anyone about why his mother divorced his dad. All right, and so when we go to the problem, we could say Brian is thinking about how his parents got divorced and the secret he's keeping about why his mom chose to divorce his dad. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you can choose this quote up here about the secret. Press pause to write down the quote and play when you're ready for the solution. Alright? And so we're going to think about, like, what does Brian do next? Like, obviously he can't solve this problem immediately, but how does he get himself to feel better in this moment? The pilot sat large, his hands lightly on the wheel, feet on the rubber pedals. He seemed more a machine than a man, an extension of the plane. On the dashboard in front of him, Brian saw the dials, switches, meters, knobs, levers, cranks, lights, handles that were wiggling and flickering, all indicating nothing he understood, and the pilot seemed the same way, part of the plane, not human. When he saw Brian look at him, the pilot seemed to open up a bit and smile. Ever fly in the co-pilot seat before? He leaned over and lifted the headset off his right ear and put it on his temple, yelling to overcome the sound of the engine. Brian shook his head. He had never been in any kind of plane, never seen the cockpit of a plane except in films or television. It was loud and confusing. First time. It's not as complicated as it looks. Good plane like this almost flies itself, the pilot shrugged. Makes my job easy. He took Brian's left arm. Here, put your hands on the controls, your feet on the rudder pedals, and I'll show you what I mean. Brian shook his head. I better not. Sure, try it. Brian reached out and took the wheel in a grip so tight his knuckles were white. He pushed his feet down on the pedals. The plane slewed suddenly to the right. Not so hard. Take her light. Take her light. Brian eased off, relaxed his grip. The burning in his eyes was forgotten momentarily as the vibration of the plane came through the wheel and the pedals. It seemed almost alive. See? The pilot let go of his wheel, raised his hands in the air, and took his feet off the pedals to show Brian he was actually flying the plane alone. Simple! Now turn the wheel a little bit to the right and push on the right rudder pedal a small amount. Okay, so we're thinking about what Brian does next. The co-pilot lets Brian fly the plane, and this takes his mind off of his parents' divorce. Press pause to write down your answer in box 4A, and we can use this quote about how he momentarily forgot about his parents' divorce. You can use this quote for 4B. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. Based on what you read in the first chapter, describe Brian's internal conflict. That is, what's going on, what problem does he have that's going on only in his mind? How does Brian deal with the conflict?